The moment the driver locked the doors, I felt the air leave my lungs. "You can let us out here," I told him, trying to sound calm. "Our flight is in 1 hour. This drop-off lane is fine." His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "You can't get out here. Trust me. My name is Asha Merrick. I have led multi-million-dollar projects for more than a decade, survived impossible deadlines, impossible clients, and a manager who fears being overshadowed by her own team. But nothing in my life prepared me for a stranger locking me inside his car on the way to the airport. "Sir, please stop the car," I said, my voice thinning. "We need to get out. We can run the rest of the way." He shook his head once, steady and sure. "Please, just trust me." The car accelerated, not wildly, but with purpose, each turn sharper than anything a rideshare driver usually risks near the Seattle airport. My teammates in the back seat kept whispering my name, waiting for me to tell them what to do, but I could barely breathe long enough to think. My fingers curled around the handle. Nothing moved. "Why are you doing this?" I snapped. "My manager said we have 1 hour. Just let us out, and we'll make it." He finally spoke more sharply. "Your flight is boarding in 10 minutes. The words hit like cold water. 10 minutes. That wasn't possible. Linda had looked me directly in the eye that morning and said, "In 1 hour." She said it with the same practiced, condescending ease she used whenever she wanted control. I stared at the locked door, at the driver's tight jaw, at the road rushing beneath us. For a heartbeat, I wondered if I had stepped into the wrong car. If this was one of those stories people whispered about but never believed would happen to them. Then he said quietly, "I am not letting you miss this plane." And just like that, the panic twisted into something sharper, something more dangerous suspicion. 30 minutes earlier, all I did was ask my manager a simple question about our flight. 30 minutes earlier, the day had started with the kind of confusion that makes your stomach tighten before your brain even understands why. I was at my desk, half awake, scrolling through overnight emails, when the airline notification appeared at the top of my screen. "Boarding begins in 30 minutes. I read it twice, then a third time. My manager, Linda Crow, had been in charge of booking every flight for our team's trip to Chicago, the pitch worth several $1,000,000 that our division had been preparing for months. She was the public face. I handled the work beneath it. That was our unspoken agreement. Or rather, her unspoken rule. I stood from my chair and walked to her office. She was leaning back, legs crossed, reviewing the slide deck I spent half the night refining. "Linda," I said, holding up my phone. "The airline email says boarding in 30 minutes. "That can't be right." She didn't even look up. "Relax." "Asha, it's in 1 hour. 1 hour." I stepped closer. "The email says it's in 1 hour," she repeated, sharper this time. "Just finish the slides for my section. I need them polished. We cannot afford mistakes today." A knot pulled behind my ribs. Did the airline update the time? Because the message, she finally glanced at me and smiled. Thin and patronizing. "Asha." I triple-checked everything. "Trust me." Trust. The same word the taxi driver would use later, the one that made the back of my neck prickle. When I returned to my desk, I refreshed the inbox. The original flight change email was gone. In its place, a gray banner read, "This message has been recalled by the sender." A recall only happens when someone tries to hide a mistake or bury it. I stared at the empty space where that email had been, feeling something shift under my feet. Quiet, but decisive. Linda had looked entirely too comfortable when she told me that lie. By the time our taxi pulled up to the curb at SeaTac, I had repeated Linda's words in my head so many times they almost sounded rational. In 1 hour. Maybe the email had been a glitch. Maybe she really had triple-checked everything. Maybe I was overthinking. Then we stepped inside the terminal. Caleb, one of my analysts, stared at the departures board. "Asha, that's our flight." Right. I followed his gaze. Flight to Chicago. Boarding now. Not in 1 hour. Not even close. That must be a mistake, I said, though the words barely carried weight. Mira pulled up her own confirmation email. My ticket says 10:20. Linda told us 11:20. Why would she tell us that? I swallowed hard and tapped Linda's name on my phone, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result, Caleb muttered. She said she'd meet us here. She said she had a call with the Chicago office, I reminded him, though I hated how defensive I sounded. Our Slack notifications chimed one after another. Mira read the newest message aloud, her voice tightening. Linda to the leadership channel. Team might have mixed up the schedule. Trying to fix it. I'll update soon. My chest went hollow. She posted that already. Caleb exhaled through his teeth. She's covering herself. I scrolled through the channel. Linda had sent 3 messages in 5 minutes, all carefully phrased to imply she had provided the correct schedule and we had ignored it. Mira stepped closer. Asha, did she give you a different time on purpose? I felt heat rise in my face, not from anger, but from the quiet, sinking realization that nothing about this was accidental. The recalled email, her tone in the office, the missing hour. Another Slack message appeared, from Linda, leadership. I'm doing everything I can, hoping the team gets here soon. I closed my phone and steadied my breath. We're not missing this flight. Her story was already moving without us. Now we had to outrun it. We hurried back outside and flagged the nearest taxi. Mira slid in first, then Caleb, and I followed, shutting the door with more force than I meant to. SeaTac departures, I told the driver. As close to the main drop-off as you can. The driver nodded without looking back. Name's Hassan, he said quietly. Flight number Caleb gave it to him, and Hassan tapped it into the small display mounted near his console. His brow tightened. Ma'am, he said. Steady, but direct. This flight is boarding in 10 minutes. I leaned forward. That's not possible. My manager told us 1 hour. Hassan met my eyes in the rearview mirror. The system shows 10 minutes. Mira's voice cracked. Linda wouldn't lie about that. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. Not after the recalled email. Not after the messages she'd sent leadership while we were still fighting airport crowds. We can still make it if you drop us near the terminal. I said, we'll run. Hassan didn't move his hands from the wheel. If I drop you where you're asking, you will not make it. His voice wasn't rude, just certain, like he had already seen the outcome play out. Caleb shifted nervously. Sir, just get us as close as possible. Hassan inhaled slowly, the kind of breath someone takes when deciding whether to argue or proceed. I can take a faster route, but it's not the one you're asking for. I felt Mira glance at me. Asha, what do we do? The mirror caught Hassan's eyes again. There was something in them recognition, maybe judgment, maybe warning, but it wasn't hostile. We do not have time for mistakes, he said. You want to make that flight. Let me get you there. His certainty pressed against my ribs. I nodded once. Fine. Take your route. Caleb muttered under his breath. I hope we're not gambling the entire project on a taxi driver. I didn't respond. Hassan had already turned sharply onto a lane marked for authorized vehicles only. Traffic tightened the closer we got to the airport. The lanes ahead were clogged, barely moving. My pulse climbed with every passing second. Caleb leaned toward the window, calculating distances under his breath. Mira kept checking the time. We should get out, I said. If we run from here, we might still make it. Caleb nodded quickly. Yeah, just let us out. We'll sprint. I reached for the door handle. It didn't budge. A sharp click echoed through the car as every lock slid down. I spun toward Hassan. Unlock the doors. He didn't raise his voice. You can't get out here. Mira's breath caught. Why are you locking us in? You will never make that flight on foot, he said. Not from this road. That is not your decision. I snapped. Open the doors. Hassan's fingers tightened on the wheel. and his tone shifted, still calm, but cut with a finality that hit me straight in the chest. "Please, just trust me." Caleb reached forward. "Sir, we do not have time for this." "You do not have time to be wrong," Hassan said. And then he jerked the wheel left, slipping us into a narrow lane marked for restricted vehicles. Mira pressed her hand against the window. "How do you even know this route?" Hassan didn't answer. Instead, something small swung from his keyring, a faded badge, the kind worn by private transport staff. I recognized the insignia from the Port of Seattle district, a place where only high-level corporate drivers were cleared. "Where did you get that?" I asked. "From a job that taught me how this city actually moves." He replied, "We are not going the slow way." His turns were too precise, too practiced. He wasn't guessing. He was following a path he had taken many times before. Caleb whispered, "He knows exactly what he's doing." And for the first time since we left the terminal, I felt something colder than fear settle inside me, a realization that Hassan knew this city, this traffic, and somehow us, better than we knew ourselves. Hassan stopped abruptly at a side entrance marked for airport personnel. Before any of us could question him, he was already out of the car, waving over a security officer who approached with recognition in his eyes. "Darcy," the officer said, "haven't seen you in years. 3 passengers for the Chicago corporate run." Hassan replied, "They need priority." The officer nodded once, motioning us through. No questions. No hesitation. Caleb whispered, "What kind of taxi driver gets greeted like that?" Mira grabbed my wrist. "Just go. Move." We followed the officer through a narrow checkpoint where another guard scanned our IDs without slowing. Hassan stayed behind the barrier, raising a hand. "Run straight to gate C12. Do not stop." We ran. Caleb nearly slipped during the sprint. Mira kept repeating the minutes under her breath, and my lungs burned as the boarding door came into view. A gate agent lifted her hand to close it. "Wait," I shouted. She paused long enough for us to stumble forward, breathless and shaking. She looked at our tickets, sighed, and waved us through. The door sealed behind us with a heavy thunk. We collapsed into our seats, still half in disbelief. Only then did I unlock my phone. The airline email sat at the top, boarding at 10:20. Linda's itinerary, the one she sent our team, read 11:20. Slack lit up with her newest message. "Unfortunately, my team missed the flight. I'll fly alone tomorrow and present on behalf of everyone." Mira covered her mouth. "She already told them." Caleb shook his head slowly. "She wanted this." I stared at Linda's message, my heartbeat finally slowing enough to let anger root itself where fear had been. Her version of the story had already been delivered, and now we were headed straight into the pitch she never expected us to reach. The moment the plane leveled out, I opened my laptop. Mira leaned in beside me, scrolling through her phone. Caleb sat across the aisle, already digging into Slack logs. "I found the recall trace," Mira whispered. "Linda pulled the flight change email at 3 a.m, Caleb added. "And look at this." She sent the client a trimmed version of the slide deck. "Half our data is missing." My throat tightened. She wanted them underwhelmed. Or confused, Caleb said. Either way, it would look like we failed. I kept screenshotting everything timestamps, message edits, Linda's carefully phrased updates to leadership about us mixing up the schedule. Every click made the betrayal sharper. When we landed in Chicago, a coordinator met us at the gate. "Where's Linda?" he asked. She said she'd arrive separately. Mira's jaw tensed. Plans changed. The conference room felt too bright as we set up. The client executives filed in, glancing at the empty chair where Linda's nameplate sat. One of them asked, "Will she be joining?" I stepped forward before my nerves could win. "No, I'll lead the presentation." Caleb and Mira exchanged a breath. "Anchoring me," For the next 40 minutes, I walked the room through every detail of our proposed integration supply chain mapping, projected savings, phased rollouts, the technology Linda never bothered to understand. Questions came fast. I answered faster. Their expressions shifted from polite interest to real engagement. By the end, the lead executive stood and shook my hand. This was one of the clearest strategies we've heard all quarter. As we packed up, he added quietly, "I'll be calling your CEO. He should know who carried today." Mira smiled at me. Relieved. Caleb whispered, "We did it." But deep down, I knew Linda wasn't finished, not after the story she had already started spinning. Linda scheduled the debrief for 8 in the morning, less than 12 hours after we landed back in Seattle. She was already sitting at the head of the conference table when I walked in, HR beside her, 2 directors across from them. "Asha," Linda said with a strained smile, "glad you could make it. We were just discussing the challenges from yesterday." Caleb and Mira slipped into seats next to me. Linda folded her hands neatly. "I did everything I could." She began, "But when the team missed the flight, I had to make quick decisions to protect the relationship with our client." I stared at her. "We did not miss the flight." Linda tilted her head. "Asha, we have records showing confusion on your end." "It happens." HR cleared her throat. "Let's stay focused on facts. Facts." I opened my laptop. Here are the emails, the recall traces, the Slack messages she sent leadership before we even reached the gate. I slid the screen toward them. Linda didn't flinch. Timestamps can be edited. Anyone can fake screenshots. Mira bristled. "These aren't faked." Linda cut her off. "Mira, please, let's not escalate this." The directors hovered between us, unsure which way to lean. Linda could sense it. Her confidence sharpened. "Asha has always been emotionally invested," she said softly. "And sometimes that distorts perception. I never intended for her to feel left out. Left out. As if she hadn't tried to remove us entirely." Caleb spoke for the first time. "What about the server logs?" Linda froze. "What logs?" Caleb slid a printed sheet onto the table. I asked IT to verify the message history. "These entries show your edits. Every revision, every deletion." The room changed. HR leaned forward. The directors exchanged a look. Linda opened her mouth. But no words came out. Her story, so carefully constructed, finally cracked under the weight of something she could not rewrite. The directors requested a short recess, but they did not leave the room. HR stepped out to call IT, and within minutes 2 specialists arrived with a tablet and a stack of printed logs. Linda straightened her blazer as if authority alone could steady the ground shifting beneath her. One of the specialists spoke calmly. "We pulled the overnight activity from the mail server. There's a flagged message at 3:07 in the morning." Linda's voice thinned. "I was updating travel details." "That is not unusual." The specialist slid the tablet toward the directors. "This is the unedited version of the message you attempted to recall." Every eye turned to the screen. The text was short, written in Linda's clipped tone. "Gate change confirmed. Flight 1020. If they miss it, I will handle the pitch myself." Mira inhaled sharply. Caleb whispered something under his breath. I felt the breath leave my chest, quiet and final. Linda's face drained of color. "That is taken out of context. I was outlining contingencies." Ait shook his head. "The recall was initiated 3 minutes later, and you modified 2 additional versions afterward." The door opened again, and everyone turned as the CEO walked in. Beside him stood Hassan, wearing the same steady expression he had the day he drove us to the airport. "Hassan called me yesterday," the CEO said, stepping forward. "He recognized your team was in trouble. He used to drive for my logistics division years ago, and he knows chaos when he sees it." Linda's gaze snapped to him. "You brought a taxi driver into this meeting." The CEO didn't blink. "I brought a witness." And IT brought the truth. HR typed something on her tablet, then looked up. "Linda, your system access has been disabled." You'll step out with me now." Linda rose slowly, her hands trembling as she gathered her things. The story she had built, protected, and weaponized had finally collapsed in front of every person she hoped to impress. Linda didn't argue as HR guided her toward the hallway. There was no shouting, no dramatic outburst, just the quiet scrape of her chair and the sound of her heels fading down the corridor. For months, she had controlled the narrative, shaping every story to place herself at the center. Now, the silence around her exit felt heavier than any accusation. The CEO waited until the door closed behind her before he turned to me. "Asha, stay a moment." Caleb and Mira exchanged a look, then slipped out, giving me a small nod as they left. I stood across from the CEO, my pulse still uneven. "I never wanted this to become a spectacle," I said softly. "It didn't," he replied. "It became a reckoning." I looked down at my hands. If she had succeeded, we would have lost the contract, maybe more. And yet you held it together. He pulled out a chair. "Sit." I did. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I am not giving you a new title today." The words should have stung, but his tone was too deliberate to mistake for dismissal. "I am giving you structure," he continued. "I want you to help rebuild the project leadership model. Choose how responsibilities are divided. Create the system you wish you had. No shortcuts. No shadows." I stared at him, startled. "You want me to design the framework?" "Yes. You have insight that no organizational chart could ever teach." He stood. "You earned that through the way you led when no one was watching." When I stepped outside, Hassan was waiting near the entrance, hands in his pockets, that same steady look in his eyes. "You knew something was wrong," I said. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes the locked door is the only way to push someone forward." The words settled into me, deeper than I expected. That locked taxi door, once terrifying, once suffocating, had broken open a future I hadn't dared imagine. And I finally walked toward it without hesitation. "Marina, you need to sign this." The paper hit my desk before I could even finish my sentence. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes, too bright, too rehearsed. I looked down. Transfer authorization, West Coast or Northeast. My pulse thudded. I thought we were talking about a promotion. She leaned back, still smiling. "We are. New York or California?" It took me a second to understand the trap. The two branches listed Buffalo and Fresno were the company's dead ends. Everyone knew it. They weren't transfers. They were silent terminations. Outside the window, rain hammered against the glass, hard enough to drown out my breathing. "For a moment," I said carefully. "I thought you meant something else." Vanessa stood, smoothing her blazer. "It's an opportunity. Marina, make the most of it." Then she was gone, heels clicking across the tiles like a countdown. I stared at the document. 90 days until both branches closed. No budget, no staff retention plan. My name typed neatly on the first line, waiting for my signature. I felt the walls tilt. 4 years of clean audits, of saving departments that weren't even mine. And this was my reward, a one-way ticket to failure. I could almost hear her voice echoing from the hallway, New York or California. That smile wasn't kindness. It was the sound of a door quietly locking behind me. I folded the papers and slipped them into my bag. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. If they wanted to bury me, I'd choose the ground myself. That night, I drove without thinking past the glowing towers, past the interstate signs, until the city lights blurred into rain. Buffalo, my hometown. The name burned on the folder's header like a dare. I hadn't set foot there in 15 years. They thought they were sending me to disappear. But Buffalo had always been a city that refused to die, and so was I. I turned off the wipers, stared into the storm, and whispered to the empty car. "You want a transfer? Fine. Watch what I do with it. The next morning, I arrived before sunrise. The office lights flickered weakly, like they already knew what was coming. I logged into the company intranet, typed the branch codes from Vanessa's file, and waited. A loading bar crawled across the screen before a single phrase appeared, strategic wind down in progress. The words repeated for both locations, Buffalo and Fresno. I checked the timestamps. The decision had been finalized 3 weeks ago, long before my promotion meeting. They had planned this. My hands tightened around the mouse. I opened performance sheets, customer retention graphs, audit records. Every document painted the same picture. The branches weren't failing. They had been starved, budgets frozen, marketing cut, staff requests denied. Marina, my coworker Devin poked his head into my cubicle. Vanessa's looking for you. I didn't move. Tell her I'm reviewing transfer documentation. He hesitated, eyes darting to my screen. Be careful. Word is, she's tight with Harmon now. Victor Harmon, the regional VP I had embarrassed in last quarter's review. I'd questioned his numbers on high net worth growth and offered a cheaper, sustainable model for community accounts. He hadn't forgiven me. I clicked open my HR chain. My name appeared in the CC line of several unread threads. One labeled succession adjustment made my stomach twist. The note inside read, position reallocation approved. Replacement under review. No one had replied to me. Not HR, not corporate operations. I was being quietly erased. I printed every report I could find. The printer coughed out pages until the tray overflowed. I stacked them neatly, slipped them into a folder, and whispered under my breath, if you're going to bury me, at least I'll dig the tunnel myself. By the time Vanessa arrived, her perfume filled the air like static. You're still here, she asked. Surprised, I turned to face her, just preparing for my new role. Her smile didn't falter. Good. I'll tell Victor you're being cooperative. As she walked away, the folder felt heavier in my hands. Maybe every path was meant to lead downward, but I was already drawing a new one, just beneath their feet. By Friday morning, the decision form was sitting in my inbox. Choose your destination by noon. I stared at the two options until the letters blurred. Fresno had sun, at least. Buffalo had snow and ghosts. But it also had something else, rumors of a redevelopment boom around Elmwood Village. New cafes opening where factories used to stand. A small chance was still a chance. I clicked Buffalo and hit send. Vanessa appeared in my doorway not 5 minutes later, coffee in hand, smile perfectly painted. Buffalo. Interesting choice. I grew up there. I said, I know the people. The area's changing. Her brow arched. Changing. The branch has been bleeding for 3 years. Then maybe it just needs the right transfusion. She laughed softly. You always did have a way with words. Marina, good luck. The way she said it, slow, deliberate, sounded less like encouragement and more like a eulogy. 3 days later, I arrived at the Buffalo branch. The sign above the door was half lit. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and hopelessness. A woman with silver-streaked hair looked up from the counter. Can I help you? I'm Marina Cole, I said. Your new manager. Her eyebrows lifted. They're sending managers to closing branches now. That's what it looks like. She wiped her hands on a folder and stepped closer. Betsy? Assistant manager. 16 years. Her tone was polite, but her eyes held the quiet exhaustion of someone who had already packed up hope. A few others emerged from their cubicles. Paolo, tall and tired. Lydia, young and wary. Rajan, counting cash with mechanical precision. Grace, folding brochures no one would ever read. No one smiled. I know what you've been told, I said, placing my bag on the desk. But until the doors actually close, we have a job to do. Betsy sighed. You're welcome to try. Dear, just don't expect miracles. I said, I expect effort. Outside. A customer pushed open the door, holding a crumpled checkbook in broken English. The line behind him stretched past the windows. If this was the end, it wasn't quiet yet. "Morning, everyone," I said, setting my bag down on the counter. "I know I'm the stranger no one asked for, but we'll figure this out together." Betsy crossed her arms, her gray-streaked hair catching the light from the half-dead ceiling bulb. "Corporate said your job is to keep things running until the closure. Nothing more." "That's one way to describe it," I replied. Rajan, the teller with calm eyes and restless hands, spoke next. "They've been saying that for months. First it was 3 months, then 6. We stopped counting." Lydia looked up from her computer, its monitor humming like an old refrigerator. "Half the systems barely work. I have to restart the loan app every morning." Grace handed me a folder filled with customer service logs. Calls still come in, mostly confused clients asking why we're closing. Paolo laughed without humor. "They don't even know where to move their accounts. Headquarters keeps saying a relocation plan is in development." I flipped through the papers, outdated brochures, faded posters, old community event flyers with smiling families and dates from 2 years ago. "Who handles marketing now?" I asked. Betsy sighed. "No one. They cut the budget completely 2 years back, said the return wasn't worth the investment." I looked around the room, dust on every surface, wires taped to the floor, a coffee maker older than some of the customers. But beneath all that, I saw something steady. They were still here. They had stayed when everyone else had left, before leaving that night. I stopped by Betsy's desk. "Do you still get community bulletins?" "Sometimes," she said, "mostly event cancellations or tax updates." "Forward them to me," I said. "I want to see what's happening around here, at home." I spread the bulletins across my table, searching for anything useful. One notice caught my eye. New business permits issued for the Elmwood Industrial Corridor, 27 approvals in the last quarter. 27! In an area headquarters had declared dead. I sat back, pulse quickening. Maybe this branch wasn't a grave. Maybe it was the door everyone else had stopped opening. I called the meeting at dawn, before the first customer could step through the door. The fluorescent lights hummed above us, casting everyone in a tired glow. "We have 30 days before this branch shuts down," I said, setting a stack of papers on the counter. "I say we use them." Betsy leaned back, arms crossed. "Use them for what headquarters wants us to process closure files, not miracles." "Maybe they don't want miracles," I said, "but I do. And I think this team can still do what we were hired for, serve people." Rajan rubbed his temples. "Marina, you're new here. You don't know how many times we've tried to suggest improvements. They shut us down every time. Then we stop asking for permission." That caught their attention. I slid the reports I'd printed across the table charts showing the surge of new business registrations in the Elmwood Industrial Corridor. These are our potential clients. 27 new startups within driving distance. Most have no banking support. Paolo frowned. "Corporate froze our marketing budget. We can't offer new account incentives without approval. Then we don't offer promotions." I said, "We offer service fast paperwork, flexible consultations, real conversations." "Paolo, you know half the business owners in this area. You'll lead outreach." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Lydia, you'll modernize what we can. Use personal emails if you have to. Grace, connect with your contacts at the community center. See who needs help opening business accounts. Betsy, handle internal approvals, whatever signatures you can still push through. Rajan, manage cash logistics and make sure we don't run out of liquidity before month's end." Grace looked nervous. "This isn't exactly in the handbook." "Good," I said. "The handbook got us here." Betsy exhaled through her nose. Half a laugh, half a warning. "You know this could cost us all our jobs. Then let's make it worth something." I said, "If this branch is going down, it won't go quietly." No one spoke for a moment. Then Paolo stood. "All right," he said. "Let's see what a dying branch can still do." By the end of the first week, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Paolo had already met with 8 new clients. and Lydia was drowning in digital forms. We were finally moving. Then the email arrived. Subject: mandatory closure readiness. Training attendance required. 4 hours a day, 2 weeks straight, at the downtown headquarters. Betsy read it out loud and slammed her pen down. They're pulling us off site right when things are working. Coincidence? Paolo muttered. I scanned the memo. Every word dripped with control phrases like standardized off-boarding procedures and orderly shutdown compliance. They're trying to keep us too busy to function, I said quietly. Rajan looked up from his ledger. If we go, everything stops. We'll rotate, I said. Betsy and I will attend the first sessions. The rest of you claim system maintenance. Keep operations moving. No one mentions outreach. Ever. Betsy nodded slowly. You're serious about this rebellion, aren't you? Only if doing the right thing counts as rebellion? I said. The first day of training was torture. A man from corporate droned on about brand consistency during deactivation. Every slide was a eulogy. By lunch, my patience was gone. When I returned that evening, Paolo was waiting by the door, eyes tight. We've got another problem. Cash limits were reduced to half. Loan approvals suspended until next quarter. Grace added. Our access badges stopped working after 5 p.m. We're locked out of the server room. I forced my voice steady. Then we find another way. For the next few days, we rerouted everything through friendly contacts at other branches. Rajan's old manager in Syracuse approved deposits. Lydia's classmate in Rochester processed online forms. It worked until Friday. That morning, every monitor blinked blue, then black. A pop-up appeared, system upgrade in progress. Lydia whispered, They are cutting us off. The silence that followed felt heavier than any storm. I looked around at my team, tired, angry, but still standing. If they pull the plug, I said, we'll light our own lamp. And for the first time, no one argued. When the system finally shut down, we packed what little we had: paper forms, pens, and one stubborn printer, and moved upstairs into the empty office above Celestina's cafe. The smell of roasted coffee mixed with ink and adrenaline. This is insane, Lydia said, setting her laptop on a folding table. We're a bank without a network. Then we'll be the bank that doesn't need one. I replied. Paolo laughed softly. The bank that comes to you? I kind of like that. By nightfall, we were calling clients from personal phones, processing paperwork by hand. Rajan double-checked every number, every signature, while Grace organized deliveries with startup owners who met us between shifts. The rhythm was chaotic, but alive. Betsy came in late with a stack of envelopes. Business applications, she said, dropping them on my desk. All signed. They trust us. Her voice cracked on the last word. 2 days later, Paolo walked in waving a clipboard. 6 new accounts this morning. 2 manufacturing, 4 tech. Total, I asked. 40 even? 40? In 2 weeks. Enough to show real revenue potential. I sent the numbers to myself, not the company server, and leaned back for the first time in days. We're doing it, I said quietly. They can't ignore this forever. Betsy looked up from her notes. You think headquarters will care? I didn't answer. My phone buzzed an internal memo, flagged urgent. I read it once, then again. Closure date moved up. All operations to cease within 48 hours. Mandatory inventory Sunday, 9 a.m. Paolo saw my face pale. What is it? I handed him the screen. He read it in silence, then slammed it on the desk. They're killing it before it breathes. Grace covered her mouth. After everything, I cut her off, voice steady but shaking underneath. Then we finish what we started. 2 days or not, we're not done. No one moved for a moment. Then Betsy whispered, Tell us what you need. I looked at them, my exhausted, brilliant, impossible team, and said, Everything. Grace found me hunched over my laptop, surrounded by coffee cups and half-signed forms. You need to hear this, she said, breathless. The mayor's holding a redevelopment press event Saturday at Riverfront Plaza. My cousin can get us listed as community partners. I looked up. As in, on the stage, she nodded. If we're quick? Paolo leaned forward. You want to make this public, I want to make it undeniable. I said, if we show results in front of city officials, corporate can't bury us quietly. And if the CFO sees his nephew's company on our client list, he'll have to pay attention. Betsy frowned. You're walking into open fire. Marina, Victor will call this insubordination. He already did, I said. Now it's just evidence. Rajan rubbed his forehead. We need data. Real proof. Numbers they can't discredit. We have it, Lydia said. 40 new business accounts. Letters of intent from 12 more. Not enough, I replied. We need their voices. Grace's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then froze. It's an unknown number. She handed it to me. The text was short, precise. They're auditing your records tomorrow. Be ready. The room went silent. Paolo swore under his breath. They're going to wipe us. Then we get everything off their system tonight, I said. Hard copies, client letters, video testimonials, anything that can survive deletion. For the next 10 hours, the branch became a printing press. Rajan fed pages into the copier until it smoked. Lydia filmed short clips of clients speaking about their accounts. Betsy organized each document into labeled binders. Grace called business owners, asking them to confirm statements before dawn. At 4 a.m., the stack of evidence covered the floor. Paolo dropped into a chair. Exhausted. You really think this will work? I looked at the mountain of paper, the signatures, the faces frozen on our screens. It has to, I said quietly, because once they erase our files, this, I tapped the binders, is all that's left of the truth. By the time we reached Riverfront Plaza, the stage lights were already burning against the gray sky. Grace's cousin waved us past the press barrier. My hands trembled around the black portfolio holding every letter, every signature, every face that had trusted us. The mayor stepped up to the podium. Buffalo's revival isn't just in the buildings we restore, she said. It's in the people who refuse to give up on their communities. Cameras flashed as she looked our way. Let's thank the Buffalo branch team for supporting local entrepreneurs through this transformation. Applause hit like a wave. My team froze, unsure if they should smile or hide. I felt all their eyes on me. And then, just beyond the stage, I saw him, Victor Harmon, immaculate in a navy suit, fury buried beneath his polite grin. He pushed through the crowd, voice low but sharp. You're finished. Marina, this stunt ends your career. I held the portfolio tighter. Funny. I thought ending my career was your project months ago. His jaw clenched. You defied direct orders. Yes, I said clearly, loud enough for the microphones, because serving people isn't defiance. It's the job. The crowd quieted, then began to clap, hesitant at first, then louder. Victor's face drained of color. From behind the stage, a man stepped forward. Kenneth Wright, the CFO. He extended his hand toward me. Ms. Cole, may I passed him the portfolio. He opened it, scanning the charts and testimonial letters. His expression hardened. These numbers are legitimate. They're documented, I said. 40 active accounts, 12 pending, all verified by local business owners. The mayor leaned toward him. I've met many of them. What they're doing matters. Victor's voice cracked. She's misrepresenting. Wright raised a hand. Enough. We'll review this tonight. For the first time in months, the silence belonged to me. My team stood behind me, shoulders squared, faces steady under the camera lights. Victor turned away, retreating through the crowd while applause rose again, louder now, rolling through the plaza like thunder that no one could stop. We ended the night back at Celestina's cafe, surrounded by half-empty cups and the hum of disbelief. No one spoke for a while. Then Rajan broke the silence. Did that really happen? The applause, the cameras, the CFO shaking your hand. It happened, I said. Now we wait. My phone buzzed just after midnight. A news alert flashed on the screen. Regional Vice President Victor Harmon placed on administrative leave pending internal review. Paolo let out a low whistle. They moved fast. Grace's eyes filled with tears. You did it, Marina. I shook my head. No, we did. Lydia opened her laptop. You should check your email. There it was, an official message from Kenneth Wright himself. Subject: new role proposal. I clicked it open. Effective immediately. We are establishing a Director of Community Development position to expand local business engagement across the region. We would like you to lead the initiative, with full discretion to select your team. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Then I smiled, because the irony was almost poetic. I already resigned this morning, I said. Betsy blinked. You would I sent the letter before the event. I was done letting other people decide who I get to be. Rajan leaned forward. And now, I said quietly, I decide for us. The room fell still. Then Paolo raised his cup. To the branch that wouldn't die. We clinked mugs, laughter cutting through exhaustion. When dawn came, I walked alone back to the old branch. The windows were dark, the doors chained shut. I pressed my hand against the cold glass. You buried me here, I whispered. But I grew roots instead. A soft wind carried the smell of coffee from the cafe upstairs, where my team was already talking about what came next. I smiled, finally understanding that this was never about revenge. It was about being seen for what we built and for who we refused to stop being.